Katie,
yeah,
you don't want any of that smoke.
Rally was,
I promise
was led by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
If you think white nationalism is made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center, no wonder you don't have a problem with what J.D. Vance said about Nixon.
The kind you're talking about in MAGA is it's made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It absolutely was.
Chris Cuomo absolutely tore into MAGA commentator and fellow News Nation host Katie Pavlich after she made the shocking claim that white nationalism was essentially invented to damage the MAGA movement. That's right, guys. You really have to see this exchange to believe it. We're going to take a look at clips from this incredibly heated debate between Chris Cuomo and Katie Pavlich. By the end of it, she looked completely overwhelmed by the direction the conversation had gone. I also want to share some of my own thoughts throughout because this was a fascinating and intense exchange. Trust me, this is a good one. Let's jump into it together.
Why did I think that? Because I realized that the ugly things that I saw coming out of MAGA, the prejudice, the white nationalism, the Christian nationalism, that was the few.
That was made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center?
No, it wasn't made up. Oh, please. Katie,
yeah,
you don't want any of that smoke.
Rally was,
I promise
was led by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
If you think white nationalism is made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center, no wonder you don't have a problem with what J.D. Vance said about Nixon.
The kind you're talking about in MAGA is it's made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It absolutely was.
So there are no real bigots in MAGA.
And an indictment by DOJ to show it.
So there are no real bigots in MAGA. There are no real white nationalists. They've all been put up to it by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Like January 6th was an inside job by the FBI.
That's what the indictment says.
What indictment says? What indictment says that the FBI did January 6th? I love hearing the conspiracies.
I was talking about the indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center in Alabama, which details how the Southern Poverty Law Center specifically paid the organizer of the Charlottesville rally to take people to and from to make up this fake hate rally that they then used against the president and the right for years. SPLC has been accusing conservatives and the right.
Just think about how unbelievable Katie Pavlich's argument is here. And throughout this entire exchange, you can really see the difference in how Chris Cuomo and Katie Pavlich approach a debate. Whatever your personal opinion of Chris Cuomo may be, and I know a lot of people have strong opinions about him, he clearly comes into this discussion much more prepared. Katie Pavlich's main strategy, if you can even call it that, is the same approach a lot of MAGA commentators use during heated debates, trying to interrupt, talk over, and overwhelm the other person. Throughout this exchange, Katie tries to do exactly what she often does with guests on her own show by repeatedly talking over Chris Cuomo. But Cuomo is a much stronger debater than she expected, and he's able to push through the interruptions and keep making his points.
You don't think there's white supremacy? If you think they created white supremacy? If you think the Southern Poverty Law Center created white supremacy?
They did.
You go with that, Katie. I'll tell you what, because I've met a lot of people with dead family members in the South who don't think the Southern Poverty Law Center is responsible.
It's about SPLC
First of all,
and the left manufacturing their political arguments.
An indictment, not to mansplain, but an indictment is a charging document. It's a bunch of allegations, not facts. And they are not even charged with doing anything like organizing it.
Thank you very much.
Well, then don't make it sound like it's a fact, because it's not a fact. If you know what it is, then you know you shouldn't represent it as a matter of fact, right?
Okay, Chris. I don't need you to lecture me about belittling the American people, talking to me about how I don't know what an indictment is. I've been working in this industry for 20 years, and you sitting here and acting like I don't know what I'm talking about.
For more than a decade. And when it comes to white supremacy, if Katie Pavlich honestly believes that organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center somehow invented or created white supremacy as a political weapon, then that's the argument she's choosing to make. Chris Cuomo immediately pushes back on that idea, pointing out that he's personally spoken to people whose families have been directly affected by white supremacist violence. Katie then tries to shift the conversation by arguing that the Southern Poverty Law Center manufactures political narratives through indictments and legal accusations. But Chris quickly jumps in and makes an important distinction. He points out that an indictment is simply a charging document containing allegations, not established facts. He argues that if Katie understands what an indictment actually is, then she should also understand that it shouldn't be presented as though it's already proven fact. At that point, the exchange becomes even more heated. Katie fires back, telling Chris that she doesn't need a lecture about what an indictment is, arguing that she's worked in media for decades and that his suggestion that she doesn't understand the topic is both unfair and insulting.
Set of facts they will use in federal court, in front of a judge, and in front of juries to make their case. That is real.
They're not
and
facts.
If you want to deny it, you can, but it is a fact.
No.
What
That's
are they
not
then? They're
an
just
allegation.
They're made up? What are they then?
An allegation is an uncorroborated suggestion that must be proven at trial by material and competent evidence that is found compelling to a judge or a jury. Otherwise, it's just a charging document. But an indictment doesn't have facts. An indictment is putting something forward that they'll believe they'll prove as a matter of fact. Maybe, we'll see. And if they show that the Southern Poverty Law Center set up the Charlottesville thing, they should all go to prison. If they can show beyond a reasonable doubt that people at the Southern Poverty Law Center created hate groups, they should all go to prison, Katie. I'm here for it. And if you get that story, I will have you lead the whole show. I'll be your correspondent on it.
Well, I have my own
you
show
can have my whole hour.
So I appreciate that.
I know, but I'm saying I'd give you both hours.
At 10 o'clock. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because I want that. I want us to get to a place where we just call right and wrong everywhere. If the Southern Poverty Law Center did that, wrong.
At this point, Katie Pavlich looks genuinely frustrated by the direction of the conversation. Keep in mind, this is someone who hosts her own show. Now, I know News Nation isn't CNN or Fox News, although Katie herself previously worked at Fox News, but you can really see how uncomfortable she becomes once Chris Cuomo starts pushing back with facts and challenging the arguments she's making. In my view, she represents the kind of political commentary that relies more on partisan talking points than on engaging with the substance of the argument being presented. Meanwhile, Chris Cuomo continues to focus on the facts and keeps pressing his points. What makes the exchange so striking is that he doesn't appear rattled at all. In fact, at several points, he seems genuinely amused by some of the arguments being made, which only makes the contrast between the two of them stand out even more.
Indictment and take the facts seriously.
I believe that it's a real indictment. An indictment is not a set of facts. And a lot of times they can't prove it.
And the old line is you can indict a ham sandwich, right? Just because this ridiculous DOJ, which of course she believes is the truth, just because this ridiculous DOJ makes claims, it doesn't mean they're true or they're factual.
Oh, look, isn't that your point about Trump? Just because he was indicted, do you believe he was guilty of everything he was accused of in the indictments?
There were some of the facts that were proven to be true and some of them that were not. And a lot of them were developed in a false nature by political actors who we saw for years and years and years tried to keep the president out of politics while they claimed they were for a democracy and preserving this right that we have, while they destroyed his reputation with false smears. When it comes to the Southern Poverty Law Center, over 10 decades, we know what happened. There are many examples of people talking in detail about things that were happening to them and the terrorizing the SPLC did to them and put them on maps, like the Focus on the Family was terrorized. There were a number of people who testified as a result of this out of court for years about what the SPLC was doing. So that is real. But if you want to go back into what Trump was indicted for, we have litigated that over and over again. That was a political witch hunt.
I'm not relitigating it. I'm not relitigating it. Here's what I'm saying. Trump was indicted. Everything in the indictment was not true. I agree with you. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been indicted.
I think you're making it absurd.
The exchange becomes even more intense here because both sides are now arguing about the broader consequences of political rhetoric. Katie Pavlich argues that Chris Cuomo is being disrespectful, while Chris responds by saying that isn't his intention and that he's trying to get to the underlying issue behind some of these arguments. He pushes back on Katie's criticism of the Southern Poverty Law Center, arguing that attacking organizations that track extremist movements may not be the best approach and that doing so could have dangerous consequences. Katie then shifts the discussion and argues that falsely labeling conservatives or accusing people of supporting white supremacy can also be harmful and divisive. She points to examples involving conservative figures and argues that rhetoric and public labeling can create serious real-world consequences. At this point, the debate is no longer just about one organization or one political argument. It's become a much broader clash over political language, accountability, and the impact that public accusations and media narratives can have on society.
Against President Trump. They are not comparable in any ways. Completely different scenarios, completely different political arenas, completely different contexts in terms of years of what had happened before the SPLC indictment. And I look forward to talking more about it.
What Chris Cuomo is pointing out here is that Katie Pavlich appears to be applying two completely different standards depending on whether she agrees with the person or institution involved. From this perspective, when it comes to Donald Trump, Katie views investigations and legal actions against him through the lens of political persecution because she strongly supports him politically. But when it comes to organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center, which she has criticized for years, she's much more willing to dismiss their conclusions and question their credibility. That's really the inconsistency Chris Cuomo is trying to highlight. He's arguing that personal political preferences shouldn't determine whether we accept or reject facts, evidence, or legal standards. Anyone watching this exchange can see that Chris is trying to make a broader point about how the law and factual claims are supposed to work. His argument is that opinions, political loyalties, and personal beliefs are not the same thing as evidence, and that's where the debate becomes much bigger than just Chris Cuomo and Katie Pavlich. It's really a debate about whether political arguments should be based primarily on facts and consistent standards, or on whichever position happens to benefit your side politically at a given moment.